This video will explain the principles of doing references in APA style. It will cover how to format the references page and several of the most common references needed for college papers. In APA, you need to include a separate references page after your last page of content. The references page is a list of all of the sources you cited in your paper. Each reference provides the full publication information for the sources, whether they are in print or online. This list is necessary to verify your sources, and it provides a way for an instructor to check your research for accuracy and plagiarism. How to format the references page. The references page should have the same formatting as the rest of the essay, with a running head, page number, 1-inch margins, etc. If you haven't already, it would be a good idea to watch part 1 of this series on the page layout for an APA paper before doing the references page.
So we need to change that to double.
So there are a few formatting principles to note for the references page. First, you need a heading that says References at the top of the page. The heading should be centered, but not bolded. And the page should still be double-spaced. Note too that there are no extra lines between the heading or each of the references in the list. Two more things. The references should be ordered alphabetically, and each of the references needs to have a hanging indent. Now there are two ways to do this. First, you can highlight the completed reference, open the paragraph menu, and under Special Indentation, the drop-down menu, select Hanging. The other way you can do this is to put your cursor at the start of the second line of the reference, hit Enter, and then hit Tab. If you have an extra line space after doing this, make sure you delete it before moving on. So that's how you format the references page. Now let's look at what to include in several of the most common references needed for college essays. Regardless of the source being cited, there are several elements needed for every APA source. Anytime there is an author, your reference should start there. There are a couple of things to note here about authors, which will apply to all APA references. Authors should be listed in the order they are in the source, and initials only are used for the first names. Each author's name should be listed with the last name before the first name initials. If there are two authors, they should be separated by an ampersand. And if there are 3 to 7 authors, they should all be listed. And there should be an ampersand before the last author's name. If there are 8 authors or more, just list the first 6, followed by ellipses, and then the last author's name. If no author is provided, you can use the organization as the author, or start with the title of the article. The publication year is always included in parentheses after the author's names. If no year is available, you can put N.D. for no date in parentheses. Titles are done a bit differently in APA than in most other styles. Longer works like books or names of journals or newspapers are italicized, which is common. What's not so common is that the titles of articles do not have quotation marks or italics. Also, article and book titles are written out like a sentence, with only the first word of a title or a subtitle capitalized. While book and journal titles are always italicized, if there are no articles or chapter titles being referenced, only the first letter of the title or subtitle should be capitalized. Just a note before we get into the most common references. We will cover the basic models here, but there are a number of complications that can alter or add to these basic formats. Things like translators, additions, editors, URLs, and other notations may need to be added. depending on the source. This is where having a handbook or a good, reliable website like the Purdue OWL will come in very handy. Referencing a book. Books, including textbooks for class, need to include these elements: the author or authors, the year of publication in parentheses, the title in italics, the publication city and state, followed by a colon, and if there is more than one location listed, just use the first one, and then the publishing company, ending with a period. If there is an edition provided, that should be included too in parentheses. Remember, the title of a book is italicized, but only the first letter of the title should be capitalized. If there is a subtitle, you add it after the main title with a colon, and only the first letter of the subtitle should be capitalized. Referencing a journal article. Perhaps the most common references for APA papers are journal articles. The author of the specific article should start the reference, followed by the publication year in parentheses, the title of the article without quotation marks, remember, the title of the journal in italics, the volume and issue number if provided, and the page numbers. Note too that the volume number is italicized, but not the issue number. And with a journal article, you do not put a P dot or PP dot in front of the page numbers. Finally, the name of the journal, the volume and issue number, and page numbers are all separated with commas, ending with a period. Referencing a journal article from an online database. In most cases, a journal article will be retrieved from a database like EBSCOhost. If so, you need some additional information added to the standard journal article reference we just discussed. After the standard reference, you need to add a DOI number or the URL of the database. If available, the DOI number is preferred, and it will be found along with the other publication information in the database. If no DOI number is available, then put retrieved from, followed by the name of the database or the URL. Referencing a web article. Web sources can be a bit tricky because they often do not have an author or publication date, and they don't have page numbers. But here's the basic format: author, date of publication, the title of the page or article, and retrieved from the URL. If you don't have an author, you can start with the article title and continue on with the rest of the information. And remember, if no date is provided, put n.d. for no date in parentheses. Well, that should cover the majority of sources you'll need. In the case that you can't find a model for your source, use the closest one you can find. Well, that should get you started on your references page in APA. If you haven't already, check out the other videos in the APA series from the PPCC Writing Center. Happy writing!